Welcome to Grandma's Wealth Wisdom with your hospitable hosts, Brandon and Amanda Neely. This is the only podcast for strategies to grow your wealth simply and sustainably, like Grandma used to. Without further ado, here are your hosts.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and welcome to Grandma's Wealth Wisdom, where we help you build wealth Grandma would be proud of.
And I'm Brandon, and today Amanda has roped me into telling a story about why I needed a therapist, but I ended up firing him. Again, I think sometimes we all need to have somebody to talk to, but sometimes it's good to also get rid of those people if they are not helping you deal with your problems, I guess you could say. But before we get into that, we've titled today's episode, You Can't Lead a Horse to Water.
You can.
You can lead a horse to water. So the title is You Can Lead a Horse to Water. You might be familiar with the rest of that phrase, but you can't make it drink. It's Grandma's way of reminding us you can make it easy for someone to do something, but you cannot force them to do it. Yeah. You can lead a horse to water, not you can't.
Right, but you can't make it drink. It's also a way of saying that people will do whatever they want to do, no matter how much you try to persuade them otherwise, which is a big caveat for people like Brandon and me who love to teach and share what has benefited us the most. But as one of our mentors wisely reminds us, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, but you can salt the feed, meaning you can help make the horse thirsty. Or in the case of people, you can bring them the information and make it irresistible, which leads us to the therapist story.
And probably, Amanda probably has salted the feed on me in marriage, probably. You never know.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. I don't know. So I was trying to not share this story, but so in complete transparency, I have trust issues, and Amanda can probably acknowledge that or no. It's especially though with people in authority. Maybe it's because of my family upbringing. Maybe it's from my military experience. Maybe it's from past jobs. I don't know. There's a lot of those kind of things. And so through some situations, I wanted to go and see a therapist about it. Actually, someone in authority said you should go see a therapist about it, so that's why I did it. And so I started seeing a therapist about this, but then I came to one of the sessions and he had a Star Schmucks cup on the table. Now, if you know anything about us, we are independent coffee shop owners, or we were at the time, and he knew I ran an independent coffee shop and didn't like St. Arbuck's one bit. And I think I had just told him that in our last session. So anyway, after that meeting, I'm trying to deal with my trust issues, family background, all the other stuff. Anyway, I didn't go back to see him after that. I didn't trust him to have the intentionality of a thoughtful person who was sitting across from him.
Right. And I remember when you came back from that session and you were complaining to me about it. And at first I thought, well, maybe he could have been testing you and trying to help you overcome those trust issues and using the cup as a prop. But then I was thinking about that and I was thinking, well, if he was using a prop, you would have thought he would have at least pointed that out. If it were the case, if it was a teaching aid, he would have used it to teach.
Yeah, he didn't do any of that stuff. And maybe he knew my personality. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, so maybe that was part of it. I don't know. But in reality, he didn't even follow up with me when I stopped making appointments. He didn't go back and ask, hey, this guy is not calling anymore, not scheduling anything. We never finished our sessions. I didn't do that either.
Yeah. So why are we telling the story? You might be asking yourself that question. What does this have to do with Grandma and leading a horse to water?
Yeah, what does my trust issues have to do with any of this stuff? Great question. It's because when it comes to building wealth, you have to be careful who you can trust to help you do it. Of course, we know Grandma is very considerate of other people and utterly trustworthy. But what about financial advisors who claim they can help you become wealthy? Really, who can you trust even after like the 2008 thing and all kinds of other things? There's a huge trust issue out there.
Yep. So Brandon has trust issues with people in authority, but a lot of people have trust issues with people in the financial sector, and rightly so. So we thought we would do an episode about who can you trust. and see where that goes. So let's start with some people that you might think you could trust, but
Those
might
people in
also be the
authority.
hardest people to trust. Our parents, our very own parents. It's hard to trust them for good financial advice. I mean, hopefully you have parents that did things right, but chances are, looking at the average baby boomer, our parents' generation, they didn't.
Yeah, definitely mine didn't. And that's maybe part of the reason I have trust issues. Maybe, I don't know. Not only do we see how much they screwed up and got us into bubbles overarching like that generation that burst, like the dot-com bubble in the late 90s and early 2000s, and the housing bubble of 2007 and 2008, and not to mention the rise in debt and,
all kinds of things.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So
one of the biggest things that we're just starting to see is that poverty is increasing substantially among boomers as they are reaching retirement age. According to a recent report from the New Schools Schwartz Center for Economic Policy Analysis.
Say that 5 times fast.
Right. I'll put a link to it in the show notes if you want to check out this report, but I'm going to quote it here, what they wrote in the report. Quote, 33% of current workers aged 55 to 64 are likely to be poor or near poor in retirement based on their current levels of retirement savings and total assets. Additionally, close to 2% of near retirement workers will find themselves in extreme poverty with less than 50% of the poverty threshold. This means that many workers will experience downward mobility when they retire, if they're able to retire at all. End quote. So what does that mean, Brandon?
That's some pretty scary numbers, actually. I mean, 35% of the oldest boomers having no more than double the federal poverty line in income. 35%. That's like a lot. Roughly speaking, that means 1/3 of boomers will have less than $24,000 per year income in retirement. Depending on where you live in the U.S., $2,000 per month doesn't go very far, especially here in Chicago, let alone the bottom 2% who will have less than half the poverty threshold, only $500 a month. And I think you talked to somebody like that just recently, right?
Right. I talked to somebody who all she has is Social Security income, and it was less than $900 a month, which is a little better than the bottom 2%, but still really hard. And, in her 70s, is trying to get a job, and it's really hard to do. But the bottom line with all these numbers, what we're trying to get at today, is that it can be hard to trust the boomers who now have gotten themselves into this situation where we see poverty increasing among the elderly and people as they approach retirement. But also, I don't trust the financial advisors that help them plan and try to convince them to save.
They help them plan?
Right. Well, so it's not just the advisors, it's not just the boomers, it's both together. And the kinds of retirement plans that became popular in the 70s and 80s and 90s as boomers were saving for retirement.
So then who can you trust? There has to be some other option.
Grandma always said, eat your vegetables. She loved making home-cooked meals with healthy food and from-scratch desserts. Would you create a diet of fast food or cookie-cutter financial products that made you fat and bloated with fees? Or would you like wholesome, time-honored wealth strategies served with balance and trust? Get started with your healthy money planning by downloading Wholesome Wealth Recipes. Your Moolah cookbook is waiting for you at grandmaswealth.com.
Let's take a quick look at 4 options. What about those financial gurus we see on TV and hear on the radio? I mean, I see and hear them all the time. How do you know when there's a sleight of hand or if you ever get a full picture? How do you know that? One key thing is to look at their sponsors. So again, look at those financial educators. Who are their sponsors? If you know who sponsors them, you can probably guess what strategies they are going to recommend.
Yep. So that's number 1, financial gurus. Can you trust them? Number 2, what about your relative or friend who is a financial advisor? Are they trustworthy in helping you build wealth? One key thing to ask when you're talking to a friend or relative who's a financial advisor or any financial advisor is what brought them into the industry, into this profession. Get them to tell their story. And if they seem to only be in it to make money, that should probably be a red flag.
Well, and I think sometimes our financial advisors are our friends next door who actually have never done anything in finance. And we're like, well, you do taxes, so you should help me with my finances. Or we just ask for advice in that way. And I think that's not a good way to go either. Then there are the Robo Advisors. Can a computer automation do better than a human? I mean, this is interesting. Perhaps with emotion out and pure logic guiding decisions, there's something to be gained there.
Like Spock.
Yeah, like Spock, or what we say is like Amanda.
I'm kind of like Spock, yeah.
Yeah, she's a little bit. But she does have emotions in a lot of other ways. Definitely more than a Robo Advisor, which is just the internet. But humans are still creating the robots and the automations. Plus, a computer could never compute the human aspects of your financial life, what some like to call the external rate of return. And they don't like compute, your dad went in the hospital and you were out for a little bit, or various things like that are effective in or affecting your financials. And I think that it's not going to account for those kind of things.
Robo Advisors can only get us so far. And then there's the internet.
The internet?
The internet. I love to ask clients, where do you typically go for financial advice? And one of the most frequent answers is Lord Google. The advantage and disadvantage of this is that there is tons of information out there on Lord Google. And some of those people that are writing out there on the internet, they conflict with each other.
I mean, I think that's almost all of the internet is like back and forth conflicting things. Right. Sometimes.
Yeah.
You can always find whatever you're looking for that will go with your opinion.
That's true. And on the one hand, you don't know who's just making stuff up and being a troll. And on the other hand, it's helpful to read multiple perspectives and decide for yourself what you believe. But again, you could also just find confirmation for what you already believe rather than something that's going to challenge your beliefs in that way. And of course, Grandma would remind us, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
She's probably said that to me for sure. So what is the average person to do? Who can be trusted to guide you in your financial decision making? We've got 3 tips for deciding who to trust to help you build your wealth. No matter who you're thinking of working with, think through these 3 things when you're trying to decide who to trust with your future.
So the number one, and it's what I call the number one most important question to ask when you're ever sitting down with a financial professional, ask this question. I tell people this all the time. What do you do with your personal money? Again, number one most important question to ask. What do you do with your personal money? You're talking to a financial expert. You would think that they have their own personal financial situation figured out. They're taking what they're teaching and they're applying it to themselves. In Grandma's language, they're walking the talk or talking the walk, both and.
And if they're broke as well, maybe not a good thing. And also making sure they're taking care of the client too at the same time.
Well, kind of. But what I'm really getting at is, are they giving you advice that they're willing to follow themselves too? And see what you think of their answer when you ask them, what do you do with your personal money?
The second tip is to make sure they will take the time to really get to know you and personalize a strategy based on your unique financial goals and concerns. I mean, you don't want to do exactly what everyone else does since your situation is going to be different than theirs. I mean, how will the advisor take the time to help you discover for yourself the best way forward? Like, again, in your life, you might be younger and running a business and your strategies and your financial goals are different than somebody at age 71 with $900 a month. Those things are very different. And so you really want to make sure that you have somebody that's looking at you and your personal goals and dreams and how to achieve those things, as well as leaving a legacy and assets and all that other stuff.
Yeah, so number one and number two might seem kind of contradictory. You want to know what the financial expert does with their own money, but you also want to make sure they're going to make something unique for you and not just give you a cookie cutter approach. You want to balance those two things, following good advice, making sure your advisor's following the same advice, but also personalizing that advice for yourself. And then that brings us to number 3. After you've kind of fielded things out here with what does that person do with their money and how are they going to personalize it for you, then you want to make sure that you're the one who will make the decision yourself. the person that you're working with won't make the decision for you, but will show you some options, discuss the pros and cons of those options, and then let you choose for yourself. And even if you are to ask them, what should I do? Or what do you think I should do? Be really careful in listening to how they respond. What you want to see is if they respond by saying things like, only you can make the final decision. And here are some of the pros and cons. This is what one person would say, this is what another person would say, but you have to make up for yourself what you say about this. That's the kind of thing that you want them to empower you to make the decision for yourself. Yeah,
and also what you say, but also what you do. Like if you don't do anything with that information, then you've actually made a decision too.
Right. And we're going to talk in a couple episodes about this idea of being empowered to make decisions for yourself in a lot more detail. So if that seems really scary to you, you're thinking, I'm not a numbers person, I hate thinking about money, then wait for a couple episodes, keep listening and subscribe, and we're going to really dig into that for you then.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that one. Definitely a lot better than this trust issues topic that I had to share my own story. But to bring it to a close here, you have to be careful who you can trust in every industry, but especially in the financial sector. So I guess me having trust issues is a good thing.
It's helpful sometimes.
So, I think it's good that I have those issues.
Sometimes.
Overall, people seem to have a healthy skepticism already. Hopefully, we gave you some good tips for how to decide who you can trust and 3 important questions to ask any financial advisor you're thinking of working with, including us. I want you to ask those questions of us. Be sure you're working with the right people so that you can avoid being in poverty in retirement, like the 35% of boomers approaching retirement in the next 10 to 15 years. Again, 35%. Don't be that person. And we love to be some of those right people for you. So to get started, go to grandmaswealthwisdom.com and click request a meeting, and we'd love to schedule a financial analysis and see if these strategies that we work through can work for you.
Yeah, so we just led you to some water here. We gave you some tips for how to find a financial advisor that you can trust. We can't make you do it. We can't make you go to grandmaswealthwisdom.com and click request a meeting, even just to do a 15-minute call with us, see if we're a good fit to work with each other. We can't force you to do that. But now that you know, it's up to you. Are you going to drink the water or are you going to keep moving along?
We salted the feed with that 35%.
Right, we did. So join us next week where for the next episode, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump.
Uh-oh, Donald Trump, really?
We're not getting political, but Grandma has a few things to say about if we all want to be billionaires with the B, billionaires.
Yeah, I'll be sharing another fun story that happened to me about Donald Trump, and not everybody wants to be like him, which I said
in 2011.
So stay tuned for that one next week. Until next time, keep building your wealth simply and sustainably for your own future and the future of our grandchildren's generation. The topics presented in this podcast are for general information only and not for the purpose of providing legal, accounting, or investment advice. On such matters, please consult a professional who knows your specific situation.